In the quiet village of Eldermore, whispers filled the air like the autumn fog that rolled in each evening. The townsfolk spoke in hushed tones about a mansion perched on the outskirts, shrouded in dark legends. This was the estate of the Evernight family, long believed to be cursed. No one had seen them for generations, yet their presence loomed large over the villagers' lives. Children dared each other to approach the iron gates, rusted and twisted like the hearts of those rumored to dwell within. They claimed that at night, the windows of the mansion glowed faintly, revealing silhouettes moving gracefully behind the curtains. Sometimes, a chilling melody would drift through the trees, drawing the curious closer only to find themselves frozen in place, a shiver creeping down their spines. One particularly cold night, a brave young man named Thomas decided he would uncover the truth about the Evernights. Armed with nothing but a flickering lantern and a heart full of bravado, he made his way to the mansion. As he crossed the threshold, the door creaked open as if inviting him inside. The air was thick with dust, and something far more sinister and unsettling stillness hung around him. Each room told a story of opulence faded into decay. Tattered drapes fluttered like ghostly wings, and portraits adorned the walls, their subjects' eyes seeming to follow Thomas as he moved. Yet it was the basement that drew him, a dark maw at the end of a narrow staircase. He felt a pull, an irresistible curiosity that whispered to him, urging him to descend into the shadows below. The basement was a labyrinth of stone and silence. As he ventured deeper, the temperature plummeted, his breath visible in the frigid air. Then, he heard a soft, melodic humming, sweet yet haunting. Following the sound, he stumbled upon a grand chamber lined with old coffins, each engraved with names that sent chills down his spine. They were the names of villagers who had vanished over the decades, their fates woven into the very fabric of Eldermore. Suddenly, the humming ceased. Thomas spun around, his lantern flickering violently. From the darkness emerged figures cloaked in shadows tall and elegant, their features obscured yet strangely familiar. He recognized them from the portraits. They were the Evernights, their ageless forms illuminated by an ethereal glow. "Welcome, Thomas," one of them spoke, her voice like silk, smooth and enticing. "You've come seeking answers, but what you find here may haunt you more than the questions you bring." Before he could respond, the atmosphere shifted. The walls seemed to breathe, pulsating with a life of their own. Thomas realized he was not merely an intruder, he was a guest in a feast where the table was set with unspoken desires and dark cravings. A hunger thrummed in the air, tangible and terrifying. "Join us," another whispered, extending a pale hand, fingers long and slender, almost inviting him to a dance. "Embrace the night, and let your soul taste the darkness we offer." As Thomas hesitated, he felt the pull of their allure, the promise of power and eternity woven into their words. He fought against it, knowing he was standing at the precipice of a choice that could change everything. The air grew thicker, filled with an unearthly scent of roses and decay, wrapping around him like a lover's embrace. But just as he opened his mouth to speak, the chamber quaked, and shadows erupted from the walls, swirling like a tempest. The vampires recoiled, their expressions twisting into something darker, revealing a glimpse of the horror that lay beneath their beautiful facade. Before Thomas could comprehend the chaos unfolding, he felt himself being drawn back, as if the very mansion was rejecting him. The shadows released their grip, and he stumbled backwards, heart racing, fleeing up the staircase and out into the night. As he burst through the iron gates, the whispers of Eldermore intensified, weaving tales of dread that clung to him like the fog. The mansion loomed behind him, its windows dark once more, but he could not shake the feeling that the Evernights were watching, waiting, their eyes gleaming with secrets yet to be revealed. In the days that followed, the town grew eerily quiet. People vanished one by one, their names fading from memory, much like those who had come before. The rumors swelled, and Thomas knew that he had merely scratched the surface of a deeper mystery that lay hidden within the shadows of Eldermore. And in the heart of the Evernight mansion, the echoes of their laughter mixed with the distant cries of those who had succumbed to their dark embrace, leaving a haunting melody that lingered in the air, inviting yet terrifying, always beckoning those who dared to venture too close. What fate awaited Thomas? and what darkness truly resided in the mansion's depths. Only time would tell, as the village held its breath, teetering on the edge of an unspeakable truth that lingered just out of reach. In the weeks following Thomas's escape from the mansion, Aldermore transformed into something darker than its usual quiet. The fog that once lingered lazily now clung to the village like a shroud, dense and suffocating. People locked their doors earlier, fearful of the shadows creeping just beyond the safety of their homes. It wasn't just the disappearances, they had grown used to those, but a new, more insidious feeling. Something was watching. Thomas could feel it, too. It wasn't just paranoia, he was certain of that. The sensation of being observed, of unseen eyes tracking his every move, had grown stronger with each passing day. Every night, just as sleep threatened to take him, he would hear faint whispers beneath his window, soft voices calling his name, promising him things in the sweetest of tones. He never dared look outside, knowing who waited in the darkness. The Evernights had marked him, though for what, he didn't yet understand. He had shared what little he knew with no one, but the villagers could sense his growing fear. They avoided him on the streets, casting wary glances, as if his presence alone invited doom. They were right. One evening, Thomas found an envelope slipped under his door. The paper was old, yellowed with age, the wax seal bearing the same insignia he'd seen in the mansion, the crest of the Evernight family. Hands trembling, he opened it, revealing a single, elegantly written line. "The night welcomes you back." He dropped the letter, heart pounding, and rushed to his window. The fog swirled in the moonlight, but the street was empty. Empty, except for a figure standing near the gate. A woman, dressed in a black gown that flowed like liquid shadow, stared up at his window. Her face was pale, unnaturally so, with features so perfect they felt wrong, as if sculpted from marble. Her eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, met his, and Thomas felt an involuntary chill crawl up his spine. She smiled, a slow and knowing curve of her lips, then vanished, dissolving into the fog. That night, the dreams came. They had always been strange, but now they were more vivid, more real. Thomas found himself back inside the mansion, but it wasn't abandoned or decaying. The halls were grand, shimmering with chandeliers and laughter echoing through the corridors. Figures, graceful and elegant, danced to music that seemed to come from nowhere. Their faces were beautiful but hollow, their eyes empty pools of blackness. And there, at the heart of it all, was her, the woman in the black gown. She moved through the dancers like a queen, her smile never fading. When she looked at Thomas, the world around him dimmed, leaving only the two of them. Her voice echoed in his mind, soft yet commanding. "You are ours now, Thomas. You've been chosen." He awoke in a cold sweat, gasping for breath. The whispers returned that night, louder now, persistent. They didn't just call his name, they beckoned him back to the mansion. In desperation, Thomas turned to the village priest, an old man named Father Morley, who had once whispered of things best left undisturbed. Thomas found him in the chapel late at night, lighting candles against the growing darkness. "Father, they're calling me. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm slipping away, like they're pulling me back." The priest looked up, his weathered face etched with concern. "The Evernights," he muttered, making the sign of the cross. "They are not what they seem. They never were. You were foolish to seek them, boy." "I didn't know. They have always been here," Father Morley interrupted, his voice grim. "Their beauty hides something ancient and hungry. They feed on more than blood, they feed on fear, on the soul itself. You're in their grip now. If they've marked you, there's little that can be done." Thomas's heart sank. There must be a way to stop them. "There is one thing," Father Morley said, lowering his voice to a whisper. "But it is dangerous, and even I am unsure if it will work. There is a book, a tome older than Aldermore itself. It contains rituals, spells to bind or banish creatures like them. But it is kept hidden, deep within the ruins beneath the village, where no light has touched in centuries." Thomas's pulse quickened. "Then I'll find it." Father Morley's expression darkened. "Be warned, those ruins are cursed. Many have gone in, and few have returned. The Evernights are tied to this land, and if they sense you trying to sever that connection, they will come for you. And this time, they won't let you leave." With no other choice, Thomas prepared for the journey. Armed with nothing but a hastily drawn map and the priest's warnings echoing in his ears, he descended into the forgotten depths beneath Eldermoor, where the ruins lay buried. The air grew colder as he ventured further, the silence oppressive, as though the earth itself held its breath. After what felt like hours, he found it a stone chamber, crumbling with age. At the center was an altar, and atop it, a book bound in leather so ancient it seemed to pulse with its own life. Thomas reached for it, but as his fingers brushed the cover, the ground trembled. A voice, familiar yet distant, filled the chamber. Thomas. He spun around, heart pounding, to see the woman from the mansion standing in the shadows, her eyes glowing with that very light. "You cannot escape us, asterisk asterisk," she whispered, stepping closer. "The night is eternal. We are eternal. And you, Thomas, you belong to us." The walls began to close in, the darkness thickening like a living thing. Thomas clutched the book, his only hope, but as he turned to flee, he realized the shadows were no longer just shadows. They were watching, waiting, and they were hungry. And just as the whispers grew louder, promising him eternity in their cold embrace, the ground beneath him cracked, pulling him into a void that felt endless. The night was far from over, and the Evernights were far from done with him. Thomas tumbled into the void, his heart pounding in his chest as he clutched the ancient tome to his chest. The world around him dissolved into darkness, thick and suffocating, a silence so complete it felt alive. For a moment, he thought it was the end, that the Evernights had finally claimed him, but then his fall slowed, and he found himself standing on solid ground, though he couldn't see his own hands in the pitch black. A faint glow flickered in the distance. He squinted, trying to make sense of his surroundings, but all he could see were the pale shapes emerging from the gloom. They moved silently, like shadows given form, figures draped in tattered cloaks, their faces obscured. They surrounded him, but none made a sound, their hollow eyes staring. Thomas took a step back, his breath shallow. His pulse raced as a familiar voice broke the oppressive silence. "You should not have come here." The woman from the mansion stepped forward, her black gown trailing the ground like a specter. Her face, impossibly pale and perfect, was illuminated by the faint glow of the figures around her. Her eyes, glowing faintly, pierced through him with a gaze that made his blood run cold. "You've seen too much, Thomas," she whispered, her voice echoing in the void. "You thought you could escape us. You thought the book would save you." Thomas swallowed hard, gripping the tome tighter. "I can stop you. I have the power now." Her smile deepened, chilling and almost pitying. "Power? You've barely scratched the surface of what we are. This book." She reached out a delicate hand, brushing her fingertips against the ancient tome. "It does not contain the answers you seek. It's a relic, a whisper of a forgotten time. We are far beyond its reach." Thomas recoiled, stepping back as the book pulsed in his hands, its pages fluttering open on their own. The text, once indecipherable, now glowed with eerie symbols, the words twisting and shifting as though they were alive. The whispers returned, louder now, swirling around him like a storm. "The night is eternal," the woman continued, her voice darkening, taking on an edge of cruelty. "And so are we. You cannot fight what you don't understand." The shadows around him closed in, the figures' hollow eyes watching him with hunger. He tried to read the words in the book, to chant whatever spell he thought might banish them, but the letters moved too fast, the whispers drowning out his voice. In the distance, he could hear a faint sound, the distant tolling of a bell, muffled and distorted. It grew louder, the clang of it vibrating in his skull, shaking the very ground beneath him. The figures around him began to change, their faces twisting into grotesque shapes, their hollow eyes narrowing into something far more sinister. They reached for him with long, bony fingers, their whispers growing louder, faster, more insistent. "You belong to us, Thomas," the woman said, stepping closer. Her breath was cold against his skin, the scent of roses and decay filling his lungs. "You always have." He tried to scream, but no sound came. The shadows wrapped around him, pulling him down, suffocating him in their cold embrace. The figures watched as he struggled, their laughter a low, menacing sound in the darkness. As his vision blurred, he saw the woman's face above him, her smile wide and terrible. Asterisk, asterisk, welcome home. She whispered, just as the darkness swallowed him whole. The village of Aldermore was quiet that night, the fog rolling through the streets as it always did. No one spoke of Thomas. No one remembered his name. The Evernight mansion stood tall and silent, its windows dark, its secrets hidden deep within the shadows. But if you listened closely, just before dawn, you could hear the faint sound of a bell tolling in the distance, and the soft, melodic humming of someone who had just found their way home. And in the darkness beneath the village, the Evernights waited, eternal and patient, for the next curious soul who dared to seek them.